Hello everyone, you are listening to Shout for Libraries on CJSR in Edmonton. Belinda Ongaro here, recording on my phone from the floor of my bedroom instead of the CJSR recording booth because it's 2021 and things are still super weird. For those of you who haven't tuned in to Shout before, every month we pick a topic relevant to librarianship and information studies. With the increased prevalence of digital technology in our lives, especially given the current restrictions, we decided what better time to talk about digital literacy. So today, we'll be chatting with some of the fabulous people on the Digital NWT team, a digital literacy education project that's designed specifically for northern communities in Canada. Full disclosure, I've had the honor of working on this project as part of the curriculum development team for just over a year now. So with that said, I'll be turning over the mic to Timothy and Dan for some informative and inspiring interviews. Enjoy!
This is Timothy Arthur, and I have the pleasure to be joined in a call by Michael McNally. He's an associate professor at the University of Alberta School of Library and Information Studies and a curriculum developer for the Digital NWT project. And as of today, he also has the very rare distinction of being a two-time Shout for Libraries guest. So welcome back to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Timothy.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about Digital NWT. How did it all get started and what is it about?
So Digital NWT is a multi-partner project that's involved in delivering digital literacy resources to communities across the Northwest Territories. So there are actually several groups involved, and the project is led by 4 Indigenous governments that form the steering committee. So that's the Gwich'in Tribal Council, the Inuvialuit Regional Corporation, the Saulteaux Renewable Resources Board, and the Tlicho government. And these organizations partner with Hands-on Media Education, Smart Community Society in the Northwest Territories, Aurora College, and the University of Alberta to deliver a range of in-person and now in some cases remote resources that aim at building digital capacity in communities across the territory. And we're hoping to, over the course of the project, reach 32 of the 33 communities. The only community we aren't targeting is Yellowknife. And the project itself is a project on the Make Way Canada shared platform, and it's funded by Innovation, Science and Economic Development through their Digital Literacy Exchange program. So how this all came about was there was work that was done in 2018 and 2019 by a group of us here at the University of Alberta in partnership with the Gwich'in Tribal Council to deliver a series of 2-day hands-on digital literacy workshops, and we did those in 3 communities in 2018, Tetlitche, Aklavik, and Inuvik. And that work, in fact, was preceded even by a 1-day digital literacy workshop in Inuvik in 2017 that was facilitated by Rob McMahon, who's now in the Faculty of Arts, and Hannah Pierce, who is a Master's in Arts in Communications and Technology student at the time. So there has been, over time, a period of relationship building and expansion in terms of what the volume of the content is and what the focus is. And so the first 1-day pilot that was done in 2017 by Rob and Hannah raised the need when we need a 2-day workshop, the Gwich'in Tribal Council suggested, and we needed in 3 of the 4 Gwich'in communities. So we were able to do that in 2018. And then with the combination of the funding opportunity from the government, the Digital Literacy Exchange program, and bringing in new partners, we were able to now have a model where we can try to reach communities across the Northwest Territories. It's a multi-year project going from 2019. Funding will end in 2022, and we're starting to think about what might happen thereafter. But over the course of the project, we're aiming to develop and deliver at least 3 12-hour workshops, 1 each year in each of the communities, along with tailoring those. The big challenge, of course, is delivering an in-person workshop got very difficult as about March of last year. So we've been adapting to that as well. And it's created some really interesting challenges in working in delivering digital literacy to communities where there's a low level of digital adoption. There's not a ton of digital devices necessarily, and certainly internet connectivity is a big issue as well. But because we have so many partners, we've been able to try and adapt and adjust and find out solutions that work in various contexts.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was going to ask you just that about how, there's this difficulty that I would expect would come about trying to deliver by digital means, digital literacy training.
Yeah, so the first course, which ran in communities in the winter time, and then winter time is the ideal time to teach these communities, teach in these communities, because people are out on the land when it is warmer out. So we try and run the courses in a January to March window. So course one ran in many communities largely without issue. And then, of course, we got a few communities that got shut down in March because of the pandemic last year. And then we had to start redesigning materials. And so the easiest approach was, switch to instructional video. Of course, we can't deliver this video over the internet. So I have about 1,000 USB sticks over time have passed through my hands, copying, sets of videos on. Video, of course, is a challenging medium to work with. It's a lot slower to produce. It's a lot harder to edit. So what was a more than 12-hour workshop for course one, I got concentrated down to about an hour and 45 minutes of video. And even then we had to make important decisions. So one of the kind of opening introductory pieces was about digital devices themselves for people who are new to computers. And we've done surveys in some of the communities. We know that access to digital devices is a challenge in many of these communities. And we are, because of the Smart Community Society partnership, able to give everyone who takes our courses a free computer. But we kind of made the decision that you can't mail people a computer and a USB stick and who's never had a digital device before and expect them to make sense of it and use it. So we focused some of the remote elements in course one on some of the more advanced topics and kind of said, well, hopefully we'll target people who already have digital devices or who have some experience with digital devices. They may not own one. And so that was a good adjustment. And now over the course of the last several months, we've seen limited opportunities to teach in person in communities across the Northwest Territories. In fact, the Territory has done a really excellent job on their pandemic management, and they've seen probably the fewest cases, I think, of any region in Canada. So we're now able to offer a small amount of in-person instruction, and so that's facilitated by Aurora College and their community adult educators. They're in the communities and they're the ones who teach the material. University of Alberta is primarily involved in the development and some of the implementation decisions, but we're not the ones who are actually on the ground teaching in the communities.
Right. So this is a huge and multifaceted project, obviously. So what exactly is your role in all this?
So my role is really in around the curriculum development, but I'll speak just a little bit so you get a sense of some of the other elements involved. So the project, of course, has a fundamental emphasis on capacity building and advocacy. So one of the things that the project was most recently involved in was the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, the CRTC, was doing a hearing into Northwest Tel and services, particularly in the Northwest Territories. So as part of the project, we organized a series of sharing circles and really tried to get Northerners' voices to participate. And so the project itself made a substantive submission talking about people paying $3,000 a month for internet in data overages, and getting individual members to make their own submissions to the CRTC. So that's one aspect of the kind of capacity building and advocacy piece. There's also a research element to it as well. My work is primarily on the curriculum development side. And so we are responsible for building in-person workshops, but we've added some remote video work to that as well. And a real range of digital literacy topics. And we do start with very introductory pieces, what are the differences among digital devices? Basic descriptions around the internet, social media, and applications. A lot of concern around online scams in communities across the Northwest Territories. That's something we found when we were talking to people and surveying. Some of the feedback we've had from our adult educators, the community partners, and so we've built resources there. In the second course, we actually have a hands-on community-based mapping activity where people take a map of their community, and we've got some 3D printed pieces, some cardboard pieces, because we couldn't print everything in 3D for this iteration, but people use Yarn, in fact, to build their own community network and kind of plan it out. And now as we start to think about the third course, we're looking at topics that are digital storytelling workshops, content related to protecting Indigenous knowledges, and we'll even potentially have a few communities where we are rolling out small-scale wireless community mesh networks. So we go all the way from people who perhaps never used a computer, there's a slide with where's the space bar, all the way to potentially building a small-scale wireless network in a community on a kind of pilot type basis.
So you're talking a lot about digital literacy, which is an interesting term. And we usually think about literacy in terms of reading, right? So what does this mean in a digital context? Are you reading more the digital content or sort of the tools themselves?
Digital literacy is an expansive concept, and it's certainly one, coming from an LIS background. Many people would be familiar with information literacy. I teach the instructional practices course here, so I'm fairly familiar with the discussion around how to define that. And there's of course the giant machinery of the Association for College and Research Libraries, ACRL, and their standards and framework for information literacy and standardized definitions. Digital literacy lacks that kind of unifying or single definition. But in the work that I've been involved with, and Rob McMahon is the PI on the project from the University of Alberta. He as well has been involved in digital literacy and broadband projects well preceding this project. But we both come to recognize that it's in one part it's about the technologies, in one part it's about the skills. It's also about the ability to understand and advocate, and it's not just an individual capacity or an individual literacy, it's a community literacy as well. So something like developing a community broadband plan is a digital literacy skill that we would like to try and enable people to have if they choose. We always want to reflect that each one of these 32 communities is very unique. Certainly they're in a northern context, and what digital technologies are best suited for individual and community use there is up to the community to decide.
Right. So what does it look like then, sort of the process of tailoring a workshop or something like that to each individual community?
We work primarily in consultation with the steering committee, who has general oversight on the project, as well as with Aurora College in particular. And there's an implementation team on the project that really brings together the key stakeholders. And the adult educators themselves have a lot of agency in determining how the material will be developed. So for that first course, those 4 big modules: devices, internet, social media, and being proactive online, there is more content than can be delivered in a 12-hour workshop. And the instructors are able to choose kind of a la carte what subjects and topics they want to focus on. And that can be done in consultation with their own learners. These are, many of the communities are small, 500 people communities. People know each other, and therefore we encourage the adult educators, develop what works for your community. It's not a, here's 12 hours and read the script and then you're done. Now, the second course, we've had a little bit of challenges moving from a remote delivery and then now back to a bit of a hybrid delivery. But even for that third course, instructors will be choosing one of those main subjects, and that they will teach that in their community. So we allow some of the tailoring that way. We of course have partners across the Northwest Territory as well. We have many students who are also northern themselves and bring their perspective into the project as well. So we really, we're trying to, as much as possible, listen and reflect what we're hearing from the communities in terms of what their needs are.
Right. And one of the guiding ideas about how you do this is to use what you call a train the trainer approach. Could you explain how that works into all this?
Yes. So one of the key elements of this project is a train the trainer approach, where University of Alberta, and partnership with some of the other curriculum team members, such as Hands-On Media Education, we develop the curriculum, but we don't do the teaching. We kind of aim to train the community adult educators from Aurora College, and hopefully over the course of the project, potentially community members as well. I remember when we were early on into the project, the idea was you might have someone who takes course 1 as a student the first year around, and maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, they're actually the instructor of course 1. Now, of course, I mean, the pandemic has challenge some of what were some of the original envisions of how we would run face-to-face courses. But the kind of emphasis is on leaving capacity in the communities. So we want to be able to enable, whether it's an Aurora College adult educator or other community partner, to be able to teach and maintain the resources. Everything we're producing is openly licensed, so it can be adapted and changed and tailored for specific contexts and potentially used elsewhere. In fact, we've got a colleague who will be delivering a workshop in Dawson City in the Yukon. So there's some digital NWT materials now shifting a little bit to the east or to the west there.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck with the rest of the project.
Well, thank you very much. We've got great partners across the project, and there's a really a lot of interest in this in the Northwest Territory in terms of how to leverage some of these technologies and learning materials to improve the digital environment for everyone.
Hi, today I'm lucky enough to be talking with Jacey Firth-Hagan and Kyle Napier working with Digital NWT.
Tanse, Kyle Napier na tsikatsan, maga niota ka about internet connectivity and digital NWT. So my name is Kyle Napier, and I'm originally from Denende, colonially referred to as Northwest Territories. And I'm working with Digital NWT previously as a videographer and now as the communications coordinator. And I'm here with Jacey, who's also working with Digital NWT.
Manguinzi Sichanai, she Saksal, Anuvik in Hli, Kuch en Shigonli, Hai Shidri Shonihli. Good morning, my friends. My name is Jacey. I'm born, raised, and currently living in Inuvik, Northwest Territories, or Denende. I'm proudly Kuch en. Thank you for this opportunity. My heart is happy. Over a year ago, I was hired onto the project as a university student, reading documents, taking notes, etc. And now I help with social media and create digital literacy videos. Nasti, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sitting down to chat about your work. I think given the nature of what we'll be talking about, that I should mention that this recording was made using online video conferencing software due at least in part to the ongoing pandemic. By now, people are well familiar with the necessity of this kind of infrastructure in our daily lives. So with that being said, can you talk a little about the state of digital information and communications technology infrastructure in the North?
Yeah, so living in Inuvik, a small northern, less remote community, we have a highway, we're able to leave by plane, but most of the time I'm currently using like my data to do work. I also have Wi-Fi, but I've spoken to a lot of community members around town about the Wi-Fi, and then I just hear a lot, it's really expensive. Recently, there has been unlimited internet and is also like very expensive, and I just worked here for this in the summertime, and I also use my data. So I'm really grateful that I'm able to at least use that. But as for the internet and the data, I myself personally have not had a whole lot of issues. And then across the Northwest Territories, it really varies. Some communities don't have a whole lot of connectivity. Even in Yellowknife, where I've also lived, the capital of the NWT, I really actually struggled with internet and connectivity there. And I believe that our tests and work that have been done with Digital NWT has shown that at times lack of infrastructure for digital connectivity.
Absolutely. Also coming from the southern end of Denende or Northwest Territories in Fort Smith, where there is increased connectivity. You're still, that's where I'm from. There are still issues of immense issues with costs, affordability, access, trying to get a service technician. It's not just the internet or digital connectivity, but the tools, to create and to participate. So in some ways, like communities are really far ahead in terms of their skill building. Like there's a lot of musicians, there's a lot of digital creators, there's a lot of movie makers and videographers. There's people like Jacey and myself who are using social media to support Indigenous language revitalization. And so, that divide, literally the digital divide, is just so much more apparent now, particularly as you're saying, with mandated distance, right? As soon through COVID, right? So as soon as you're put in a situation where you have to participate and communicate digitally, then it really illustrates just how bad those issues are. So like, it's not unheard of to have $1,000 internet bills for each household in each month. And as Jacey's saying, having to connect and hotspot your own phone because it has better connectivity than your server, like, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's been that way for a long time. So the issues that come with that mean, not being able to participate in a global conversation, not being able to participate in telehealth, teleeducation. There are situations where not only are there internet outages, but power outages across communities that last several days. So it's not just the internet, but a lot of issues. So what does that mean, right, to not participate? Well, you see examples like #SealFee, where people like Ellen and a lot of the Greenpeace and whoever were very much against the seal hunt. Well, then you have situations in Nunavut where they're or Northwest, way up in the Arctic in Inuit Nanangat, Inuit homelands, where they start taking and showing their respect for the seal and wearing the seal and participating in the hunt. So you have #SealFees, where people are being able to say, hey, back off. This is the way we've lived for thousands of years, And so that's just one community example. But so it's not just connection to the internet, but digital literacy. But speaking specifically about the internet, we have a campaign, #NWT Digital Divide, which, as Jacey was saying, we have partnered with CIRA and have made submissions to the CRTC. And so the difference here is CIRA, the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, partnered with us to develop a speed test for communities to assess their upload and download speeds. Fairly simple, fairly easy. So you see, like, communities where I'm from, Fort Smith or Yellowknife or Inuvik, have better connectivity. And Hay River, I should also include. Those are the 4 most populous. Yellowknife's the only city. The rest are towns of about 3,500 people, and so they have better than average internet across the Northwest Territories. But that's not really saying much, because most communities, if you look at the CIRA speeds, you get sometimes averages of 0.05 megabytes per second. Like, it's ridiculous. Some communities aren't even able to take the low bandwidth version of the CIRA test. Now, here's where that's a real consequence. So as I said, there's the CIRA test and the CRTC submission. So the CRTC submission is informed by the speed results of the CIRA test. So if communities are not even able to assess their speed, well, CRTC is not able to quantify that data, and they're not able to act on it. So we at Digital NWT have made a contribution to the CRTC. It's just as part of our mandate, right? And one of the many things we do in terms of addressing the digital divide. So we took qualitative data along with quantitative data and made a CRTC submission. And so in that submission, we address what we're doing to work with communities, which is also, like you're saying, digital literacy, and also we're featuring digital innovators. We have 3 campaigns here. They are #NWT Digital Divide, #NWT Digital Literacy, and #NWT Digital Innovators. And so Jacey was featured as a digital innovator for her work with Speak Gwich'in to Me. And so in each of these campaigns, and the Digital Innovators campaign, we're speaking to people who are using the internet and digital technologies in incredibly innovative ways. So, some people are 3D modelers, are world builders, virtual reality artists. There are people that are setting up their own ICTs across communities. And the majority of people that we're featuring, I think only one person we featured so far is non-Indigenous. And the reason why is, communities like Yellowknife and Hay River and Inuvik and Fort Smith have better access to the internet and digital tools and technologies. So what we're realizing with the NWT Digital Divide campaign is it's predominantly communities outside of that. It's smaller communities, and those smaller communities are predominantly Indigenous. And so that's why it's especially important to consider, the audience in these campaigns.
Thanks for setting that context. And you described the problem of the lack of infrastructure so well. Something that I found fascinating, because I was reading the Footprints in New Snow report from the Nunavut Implementation Commission last semester, and I found it remarkable because it was written in 1995, well before the culture had accepted the primacy of place that the internet was going to occupy and its importance. And I realized that Nunavut is a different community than NWT, but the commission, they were well aware of the implications, and they had this incredibly firm grasp and realistic outlook on the importance of digital ICT to the North and to the world in general. And from what I understand, this was true of many Northern elders. So my question, I guess, is if the communities in the Arctic did have such a good idea of where things were headed, could you speak to why the North still has to play catch up with respect to this infrastructure?
That's a really good point to ensure that Nunavut, which is a territory, and I would argue is actually a bit, in its own way, more advanced than some of the communities I've seen in the Northwest Territories. So, despite having further restricted access in more communities in Nunavut, they have been able to assert sovereignty over how they use these tools. So we're seeing actually incredible innovation come out with digital technologies in Nunavut, and because of that, like you're saying, they have a strong grasp over how those tools would be adopted and used. I'm also going to say that Inuit in the region have also there's a much stronger fluency in Nunavut, and because of that, there's a different way of thinking. And so, I'm not from Nunavut, but I have relations there and have been there twice and all of that. And so, there is connectivity, and people are using it in their own ways. And what I've found very interesting is that it's mostly in Inuktitut, or building resources for Inuit in the region. So like the autonomy there is just fantastic, the technological autonomy, right? Now, an example that this is Digital NWT, so it isn't really our mandate to talk about Nunavut. So this is a bit out of my, but we do have to look across the territories, right? What are the parallels and similarities, and what are people dealing with? So last October, government of Nunavut faced a substantial lack of access to their connectivity. What happened was there was I think it was a phishing scam or something, and it locked all of the computers. So it was like malware that one person downloaded the wrong thing and infected all the computers, and they were threatened to pay some odd ransom in Bitcoin. So that situation stretched for several weeks, and in those weeks there were no communications by phone, internet, email. Sorry. The only way to communicate was by phone, voicemail, and fax, and in person. This is pre-COVID, but could you imagine this during COVID? Phone, voicemail, and fax. Okay, so that means the judiciary is shut down. That means the medical health records are lost. That means government services, administrative services, anything connected to a computer is locked down, right? So all it takes is one person to download the wrong file or whatever, right? Someone shares a link and it says, "Hey, this is my family," and it's not, whatever. So that happens, and that's why digital literacy is so important. And that's why, you know, having also just faced that recently, I'm well aware that that anyone who's connected to the government of Nunavut, and you know, Inuit in the region would be just well aware of the consequences of, okay, what happens when all of that's lost, right? And so there's a lot of various factors they're dealing with. Now, to bring that back to Northwest Territories, I think we should heed that as a lesson. And I also think that there's a lot of different government overlap in the Northwest Territories. So that's what sets the difference. Now, your other half of your question was, you know, why is it taking so long? Well, so okay, let's talk about kind of lessons learned across the territories first, which are, you know, that it's important to have autonomy over your own story and over your own creation, over your own words, over your own community narrative, right? Jacey and I grew up not having video games in our language, not having apps in our language, not having representative you know, culture or media that speaks to us, right, publicly. I mean, in our communities, yeah, but you know, that's the difference in being able to create your own media with digital technologies, and that's the importance of digital literacy. So, you know, technologies aren't new to us as Indigenous peoples in Denende, but because technologies have been in this region for as long as people have been in the region, which depends on who you ask, but I'm going to say it's in the hundreds of thousands of years for sure, like, you know, going up and down with the Ice Age. So anyway, technologies are not new to us. Digital technologies, however, are new to everyone. Everyone's embarking on this journey together. This is within living memory of, you know, oldest people right now, right? So as long as it's new to all of us, how are we independently and in our own different communities going to use that differently? Now, the difference between Northwest Territories and Nunavut is that Northwest Territories has multiple different layers of governments. So in one community, you might have 5 different governments. And so communities and individuals and those governments are all going to use digital literacy and technologies differently. Well, that doesn't answer the question of internet connectivity. And so why is that still a problem? And that's a really good question, Daniel. So the reason that's still a problem, it's a multitudinal answer. It's because there aren't enough people in the territories for Southern bureaucratic Canada to really push for that mandate. It's very, very expensive, and it does require upkeep, and there's long distances you have to travel. And so, right, a cut in the line is going to sever internet for days in a community. I've days or weeks, right, in a community. That's not unheard of. So the problem is, right, having a situation where you're dependent on digital connectivity and communications, and now when that happens, then there's virtually no access of communication in that community, right? When the internet's gone, and you can't go door to door, what's going to happen? Well, that's just one consequence. So anyway, right, so not enough people is another thing for Southern bureaucratic Canada to, I mean, but people are making a difference, right? CRTC and CIRA are making a difference. And so they're trying, but what they need is data. And so in order to effectively make a change, CRTC needs data. And so in the last time CRTC did a call for public consultations, that was in 2016. And I'm willing to say that at that time, the public of the Northwest Territories did not necessarily respond in such a way to the CRTC's public consultation to address why it's such an issue. Not only because they couldn't have heard about it because digital connectivity is so low, but also, you know, it's a bit of an intimidating process. So as part of our digital literacy campaign and in facing CRTC's recent call for public consultations, we and Jacey developed videos, instructional videos for like, here's how you take the CIRA test. Here's how you'll make a CRTC submission. And the CRTC submission, I should say, was developed by Murat in Northwest Territories, and the CIRA one was developed by Jacey. And we really kind of made it as easy as possible. Now, not everyone can watch the videos, right? If connectivity is that low, right, how are you going to use the videos? How are you going to even be on Facebook enough to see that that they're doing a public consultation? Like, no one's putting posters in the communities, and it's not the fault of CRTC, but as part of our mandate, we definitely raised awareness over, like, this is your chance, right? And so the last time that the CRTC did a call for public consultations in 2016, what happened was internet access became a human, a public utility. I think I want to say human right, but that isn't their phrasing. But essentially, their mandate and their goal. I believe is now 50 megabytes per second, something like that is what they're aiming for. Fantastic. So that's what happened the last time they did the consultations. Now, there wasn't as much participation in the Northern Territories as there should have been, because how would they have heard about it? I didn't hear about it, and I worked with technologies, and I worked with technologies in Northwest Territories at the time then. So having not heard about it then, I imagine that most people hadn't. So we went on just a massive campaign to share as much as we could. And if you couldn't make the CRTC submission, that's fine. Take the SEER test and take this. There's still time to take the SEER test. We're not done. We're still gathering data. And I hate to use the word data, but that's what it is when you're gathering these quantitative stuff. So they need data. And now you're looking at challenges and still, like you're saying, why is it still not operative, functional? Why is it still not working well enough that it's a household issue? And you do have environmental conditions. You have massive costs to run them through, and there should be a competition towards access. That's what I'd like to see, and that's not what I'm seeing. Yeah, I hope that in some way answers your questions. But there's still partnerships. I mean, in Inuvik 2 years ago, there was the Digital Connectivity Summit, which is an international internet connectivity summit. So there are people proposing local solutions, and that's what matters, and that's what needs to happen, because what has been happening hasn't been working.
Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to catch us here next month for the remainder of Dan's interview with Jacey and Kyle. You'll also get to hear from Jacey Carell, who I've had the pleasure of working with on the Digital NWT project as well, all about her company, Hands-On Media Education, and the power of digital storytelling. Follow us on our Facebook page or Instagram at Shout for Libraries, or on Twitter at Shout4Libraries. You can find all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Spotify. Want to have your own voice heard on Shout? We're always looking for new full-time and part-time contributors to join our team. Get in touch at news@cjsr.com to find out more. And don't forget to check it out.